The Sun Cure, Restoring the Lost Art of Light as Medicine. This is the expanded second edition by John EverBlest. The Sun Cure is first in the series called Eden, God's Magnificent Outdoor Automatic Healthcare System. Hello, I am John EverBlest. The Sun Cure is a historical, pictorial medical record of what the pioneers had to do to successfully reverse the horrifying multi-generational global pandemic of tuberculosis, the war on TB. These medical images are not of a sensual nature, but they do show skin. They're medical records. The images are incredibly instructive, but they are not really intended for children, so parents, use your discretion. We have our own end-time health wars to deal with now. Pandemics being just one of many genocidal attacks. We've already learned the deadly results of placing our trust in man's counterfeit healthcare system. Given what's already coming from us from every angle, it behooves us to learn everything we can from these pioneers of natural law healthcare. Soon, God's natural law healthcare system is all that we will have access to. But it's what we should have been doing all along. It's what God designed for our health and healing. The Eden series takes us way back to the old paths, wherein lies the good way. An outdoor lifestyle contains the very countermeasures to the weapons currently formed against us in these evil end times. The Sun Cure presentation vindicates God when he said, sunlight good. All right, here we go. When God placed Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, he surrounded them with nature, side to side, top to bottom. All of nature was designed to keep them healthy automatically, without them even trying. And different parts of nature had different jobs in keeping Adam and Eve healthy. It wasn't just the herbs that were for the service of man. Everything was for the service of man. From the very ground they walked on to that bright star 92 million miles away was healing. All they had to do was show up. Just standing there on planet Earth, their health was improving because God embedded our healthcare into outdoor nature. Therefore, when we separate ourselves from nature, we separate ourselves from our healthcare. Eden was God's natural law demonstrated as an example for all of us. And that natural law was the greatest healthcare system the world has ever known. It was simple, easy, powerful, automatic, and free. We were fearfully and wonderfully made. Therefore, God gave us a healthcare system that was also fearfully and wonderfully made. It was God's magnificent outdoor automatic healthcare system. The outdoor healthcare system contains the provisions for the terrible emergencies of disease, even the diseases of this wicked age. No drugs required. The healing agencies embedded in nature are both prevention and cure. They are the very counteragents to the weapons currently formed against us in the ongoing satanic genocidal poisoning of mankind. The following list outlines the basic Eden healing lifestyle principles as showcased in Eden. They are God's health statutes on display. Live, work, and sleep outdoors. outdoors. Number 2, live in the beautiful and grand of nature. It's a healing remedy. It's an actual natural remedy, is the beauty of nature. Number 3, tend a garden, eat fresh from it. Number 4, full body sunlight and air exposure. 5, pure water. Work when it's light, sleep when it's dark. Walk barefooted. Live low stress. Live chemical free. No electricity. No man-made EMFs or Wi-Fi or radio waves or radar waves. No microwaves. Work with nature, not against it. Rest on the Sabbath. Daily time with God. Marry someone nice. Don't talk to snakes. In other words, don't parlay with sin. Clearly, God's health statutes are not grievous. Look at that. All right, let's talk about sunlight. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light that it was good. Genesis 1, 3-4, and then 14 through 19. To prove how good sunlight was, God placed Adam and Eve in a garden in the sunlight all day, every day, without clothing, just light. History itself testifies to the fact that sunlight is good. During the war on tuberculosis, sunlight and fresh air were the primary countermeasures. And who better to tell what sunlight can really do for our health and healing than those pioneering men of science, the physicians who wielded it daily in the treatment of countless patients worldwide. Their medical expertise in light therapeutics is unequaled in this generation. Their knowledge represents lifetimes of practical, hands-on, in the trenches, life and death, battle-scarred experience. God pronounced sunlight good. These men proved it. All right, we start with TB. Tuberculosis was known as the Great White Plague, the White Death, and consumption. It was highly infectious and was one of the deadliest diseases in human history. During the late 19th century, tuberculosis accounted for about 20% of all deaths, and tuberculosis is still an active disease around the world. Unlike other plagues, tuberculosis did not make a sudden appearance, devastate a population, and then quickly die off. No, instead, it infected a person over a period of years or decades through alternating cycles of sharp attacks and remissions. Throughout history, sufferers are characterized as feverish, dehydrated, and afflicted by strong bouts of coughing, which left them fighting for breath. Their bodies became emaciated, lethargic, and pale white, earning the disease the name the Great White Plague. Tuberculosis is a highly contagious disease that is transmitted through infected droplets from a sneeze, cough, or simply from talking. It is most known for affecting the lungs, but it can also invade and destroy muscles, joints, bones, organs, and skin, as you will see in the images to come. The war on consumption organized. In the latter part of the 19th century, states and nations finally began to work together to eradicate TB. They termed it the War on TB. They organized to find its cause, treatment, and preventions. They finally discovered that TB thrived within the poverty-stricken city dwellers living in close quarters, unsanitary conditions, and deficient in healthy food, fresh air, and sunlight. This generation is also deficient in healthy food, fresh air, and sunlight. So they began to promote sanitation, fresh air, healthy food, and sunlight, and found that these did indeed both prevent and reverse TB and many other diseases. Many healthcare providers around the world began using fresh air and sunlight as medicine, and with great success. To many, it provided escape from pharmaceuticals and even surgeries. That is applicable to us. The pioneers came up with a number of options for treating the sick with sunlight and fresh air. Some of the options you are about to see may soon apply to us as the world spins out of control. It should have applied during COVID. I suggest that the viewer take the principles that were used and adapt their application appropriately to Christian principles. Please understand what I'm saying. The following are just some of the many options the pioneers came up with to reverse TB using sunlight and fresh air. Option number 1 was open-air TB sanitariums. And yes, that is where Weimar Lifestyle Health Center is located today. But it started out as a joint sanatorium for TB. Tuberculosis sanitariums seem to be the most common option for TB victims. The building at this California facility were designed with lots and lots of large windows that opened wide for fresh air and sunlight. This is in Northern California, near Sacramento. This one was called Weimar Joint Sanitarium, and these types of TB sanitaria could be found all over the world. Option number 2 for treating with sunlight and fresh air, open-air TB tent colonies. The facility in this photo was in the mountains of New York State. These kinds of tent colonies were worldwide. From 1900 to 1905, the overall mortality of consumptive patients in open-air wards was less than half that of those who received the orthodox indoor treatment of the day. This outdoor treatment was what we should have been doing during the COVID wars. And it is very likely that some of us here today will end up in places like this. Or we'll be making such places available for the sick and or persecuted. We need to prepare for what's coming. Option number 3, backyard open-air sleeping or isolation tents. Just look at how simple of an option of open-air dwelling can be. Just a tent in your backyard. Number 4, open-air sleeping rooms or porches. Open-air sleeping rooms such as this were available to patients at the world-famous Battle Creek Sanitarium in Michigan, if they could be induced to use them. They weren't forced. Open-air tents were also an option for patients at the Battle Creek Sanitarium, but tents were a requirement for patients with infectious diseases, which included TB. Option 5, fresh air window tents. This is at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Option 6, indoor window sunbathing. The glass at the Battle Creek Sanitarium used UV transmitting glass. Common window glass blocks 86% of ultraviolet light, and that's just single pane, untinted window glass. So let's address that for a moment. See that picture there, the little chicken? He was raised under glass, regular window glass. The big chicken was raised in direct sunlight. Here's the story from The Basis of Light in Therapy, 1928. Chickens born of the same brood may be separated into 2 equal groups at hatching. Half are placed in a glass cage and half are outside. Everything else, Food, water, and sunshine may be the same, but the chicks behind the glass will not thrive. They will be stunted. They will have weak legs. They will act for all the world like rickety children. The only difference was that the strong, healthy chickens have had unstrained sunlight, unfiltered. Think of the application to our children. We cannot mess with the natural order of things and still expect good health. Option 7, sunbathing pavilions with UV transmitting glass. It was called Vitaglass back then. That building, now that is the ideal building for indoor sunbathing. Notice how the windows open wide as well. Fresh air was an exceedingly important healing agent. This one was in England at a children's hospital. Option 8, indoor artificial sun baths. This one was at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. This one is in Belgium. Indoor sunbathing beaches. Isn't that a thing? Number 10, indoor sunbathing cafe and juice bar. Wow. This was on top of a New Jersey skyscraper. A juice bar, ice cream, and amazing view. Notice the nurse on duty in the back. There seems to be a male nurse attendant there as well. Half of the round lights that you see are 275 watt, 120 volt General Electric heat lamps. The other half of the round lights were bright, clear glass flood lamps. The square fixtures are ultraviolet sun lamps. Option number 11, preventoriums for children at high risk for TB. This one's in France. So, at-risk children around the world were taken from their homes and placed into preventoriums to strengthen their immune systems to prevent TB. Sunlight, fresh air, exercise, rest, a healthy diet, it all worked because these agencies were part of God's original outdoor automatic healthcare system, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden. These preventoriums were worldwide. This one was in France. Option 12, the Sunshine Playground. This was on Dr. John Harvey Kellogg's property next to the Battle Creek Sanitarium, a couple blocks away. It was a preventorium in the form of a playground. The building is called the Sunshine Center for training children and their parents and the community in healthy living and the treatment of disease. Modern application for this? Wellness day camps, wellness summer camps for children, families, and adults. Dr. Kellogg created that playground for his children originally. When they grew up, he called it the Sunshine Playground and opened it up for the use and health of the neighborhood children. It was the most popular playground in all of Battle Creek. No one else was doing this on planet Earth, a Sunshine Playground. Children were medically examined and monitored and treated as needed at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Health classes were offered, sunbathing and swimming time at the Sunshine Playground. The playground was surrounded by privacy fencing, and children were enabled to obtain near full-body sun exposure. Boys and girls were, of course, separated. It offered agricultural training. Now, what you see here, this wasn't just teaching children the theories of good health practices. This was good health practices. The deer park. Dr. Kellogg had a deer park on his property as well. Dr. Kellogg's Sunshine Playground, Sunshine Center, and Deer Park were all part of an attraction health ministry to the city. It attracted residents. That's something to consider. This is Dr. Kellogg talking. Small children ought to wear as little as possible in the summer season so as to allow their bodies to become well browned in contact with the sun and air. That's part of the Sunshine Playground you're looking at. However, when it was not practical or appropriate to, quote, wear as little as possible, unquote, then Dr. Kellogg would recommend that they wear thin, white, loose-knit, natural fiber clothing instead, because sunlight penetrates that better and without being distorted by the colored or dark clothing. Practical skills were offered at the Sunshine Playground. This was just another way to keep them there longer in the open air and sunlight. They also offered organized reading or /rest time. All right, moving away from the Sunshine Playground to number 13, option number 13, open air gymnasiums with privacy fencing. This was the Battle Creek Sanitarium. As far as I know, this is the only place in the world where this was offered. It was offered here first, one way or another. This was the Sunshine Playground for adults. One for men, one for women. That is the only picture we have of the women's outdoor gymnasium. The Battle Creek Sanitarium was the greatest hygienic healthcare institution that has ever been. It was the largest and most well-equipped. It had the greatest physician in our world, according to Ellen White. It was raised up at God's command. It had over 1,000 different kinds of baths and therapies, yet sunlight was considered to be one of their most effective treatments. You hear that? That's saying something. How on earth did we ever come to settle on the ridiculous notion that our man-made therapies and equipment have greater healing power than the healing agencies of sunlight and open-air living? That bright star, 92 million miles away, contained more healing power than anything the world-famous Battle Creek Sanitarium had to offer. And no one offered more and better things than the Battle Creek Sanitarium. This is a big old fat lesson we should be learning here. Our healthcare is outdoors. That's primary. Man-made stuff, a distant secondary. If we expect our patients to recover in the midst of this ongoing global genocidal poisoning of mankind, then sunlight and open-air living must be our primary weapon, not an afterthought. As valuable as things like hydrotherapy and herbs and hyperbaric oxygen chambers and saunas, etc., as valuable as these are, they cannot work successfully alone. They cannot prevent or reverse the blitzkrieg of intentional global poisoning from every angle if that's all we're going to use. We must use all the weapons in God's arsenal now if we are to keep up with the exponentially increasing attacks on our health by Satan and his minions. God here in these last days, you feel it, you know it, you've seen it online, that God is leading us back to the authentic, outdoor, automatic healthcare system. We don't stand a chance if we ignore it. Useful labor in hot sand baths, that's still in the Battle Creek Sanitarium. That's what I'm doing here. I'm describing what's in that outdoor gymnasium. Physical activities. Global poisoning necessitates that we provide a healing lifestyle of open-air living wherever possible. When we go to the homes of the sick, we must get them outdoors. If we treat the sick at our own homes, we need to provide some kind of privacy area for total body sunbathing and the option for some type of open-air sleeping arrangements. Sunbathing and group exercises at the open-air gymnasium. The Battle Creek Sanitarium encouraged their patients to spend as much time as possible outdoors, including sleeping outdoors in tents or open-air sleeping rooms or porches. See my presentation called Open Air Healthcare. This is an outdoor mechanical gymnasium, part of the open-air gyms. And swimming pools. Every 2 weeks, a carnival was held here at the men's open-air gymnasium at the Battle Creek Sanitarium. Option number 14, beach solariums for sunbathing. This is a very practical option. These places posted words like curative and life-giving. They were clearly familiar with the true nature of sunlight. The whole area was surrounded by a tall masonry wall. Men and women, of course, had different sections, because back then, they remembered how to blush. It was operated by the municipality of St. Petersburg, Florida. The photo is from the 1930s, and Dr. Kellogg was referenced in one of these brochures. It was his quote, although they didn't identify him as Dr. Kellogg, but I recognized the quote. Now, to be clear, here, they have towels on right now because there's a camera. This was for nude sunbathing, if they wanted it. Option 15. Rotating sunbathing huts. This is interesting. This hut could be turned to follow the sun, and it could block the cold wind if desired. This one is on the roof of a children's hospital in England. Option number 16, open-air health camps for kids. Hey, we could do that. Kids, we go to these summer camps. We don't have to just send them there so they have a fun time. We get them there to be healthy, like a preventorium. Okay, so what if we were to add this element to our children's summer camp? A health and immune boosting option. This camp has the qualities of an open-air summer camp, a preventorium, and a sunshine playground. Building health does not have to be difficult. It's as simple as camping outdoors, spending time outdoors. At that camp, they both ate and slept in open-air tents. Option number 17, open-air schools. This was a decommissioned ferry used as an open-air school for children at risk for TB. This was in New York by the Brooklyn Bridge, as you can see. This was an open-air school in the wintertime in Chicago. This was an open-air school held on a beach in Los Angeles. I believe it was Santa Monica. Open-air schools became a worldwide practice because it worked. For recess, these kids got to swim in the ocean or build sandcastles. The pioneers found that if a TB patient did not respond to the sun cure, they would likely respond positively to sea dipping, S-E-A, ocean dipping. But that's another story. This is an open-air school bus in Brooklyn. It was a different culture, man. But of all these providers who offered sunlight and open air as medicine, one provider stood high above them all. Dr. Auguste Rollier, the 36 Suncure clinics of Leysen, Switzerland. Yes, he had 36 clinics. I am thoroughly convicted that Dr. Rollier was raised up by God to take a major role in the great health reform movement of the late 19th and early 20th century. It wasn't just the great Adventist health reform movement. We were the tip of the spear, yes, but God also called men of the world to his service. Even Dr. John Harvey Kellogg made 2 extended stays here to learn from this master of sunlight therapy. As Dr. Rollier's role in history is now being rediscovered, those that have heard his stories and seen the remarkable before and after images are amazed at the healing power of God's sunlight and open air, which we're just about to see. Rollier's work in turning people back to God and his specified healing agencies of nature. Dr. Rollier opened his first high-altitude TB clinic in 1903 in the Swiss Alps. He specialized in surgical TB cases and called his program the Sun Cure, La Cure du Soleil. Eventually, Dr. Rollier had 36 Sun Cure clinics in and around town. Any space that could be found. This particular clinic is on top of a tiny strip mall in the village. The principle here, we use whatever God has placed in our hands. All right, now let's do a close-up on this. There it is. Look at that. Filled with beds. This is for women, apparently. Now, the next image is really tragic, hard to see. This image is from a Sun Cure clinic in Germany, not Leysen. This is not Rollier's patients. I use this image here only because this one image portrays the scope of the TB crisis so very well. Notice all the plaster body casts here in the German facility? Well, the following is a quote from a doctor in 1927. He describes the reality and success at Leysen. He's not describing Germany. He's describing Leysen. Here we go. Many of the results obtained at Leysen in the cure of TB and other persistent orders of health have been little short of miraculous. Terrible ulcerations, debilitating abscesses, and nerve-destroying weakness have vanished under the magic of the sun's rays scientifically applied. Spines softened by tuberculosis so that they were of no more use for support than had they been made of putty. These have been made whole. Disorganized joints and limbs distorted in apparently hopeless confusion of natural function have been made straight, but it was also assisted by physicians with splints. Not to get the wrong idea. Lungs so rotten with tubercle that they had burst through the chest wall itself have healed, and the terrible wounds resulting have closed up. Little children, crippled and carious, have been made strong, whilst in other forms, consumption has yielded to the sun cure. Yeah, that's a hard to look at image, isn't it? And I've had it, and you've been watching it all this time. Sorry about that. All right. The treatment was slow, but extremely effective. That's my quote. I'm summing up what I've read in Heliotherapy, 1927, page 39 to 47. Dr. Roulier reported to the 17th International Medical Congress in London, England in 1913 that out of the 1,129 surgical TB patients he treated since opening in 1903, 951 were cured. In other words, the sun cure had an 84% cure rate on dreadful surgical TB, patients who were close to death. This was accomplished without the expected maiming, risky surgeries of the day. Let me explain that. This is called surgical tuberculosis because it surgically bores itself in, and makes tunnels in the body. Dr. Roulier avoided actual surgery on these patients because it made things much worse in the long run. A few, he had to, but most of them he did not. Not a few were confined to bed for months on end. Conditions like spondylitis, inflamed spine, and or ankylosis, stiff or fused joints, required complete immobilization. Some required traction, splints, or casts. Notice no plaster body casts, just traction. If you look there, the first three you can see just barely. Oh yeah, there's traction there going on there. And they're receiving therapy right now in the sunlight. At the sun cure clinics of Switzerland, TB patients were rolled into the morning sunlight for daily, regulated sunbathing. Dr. Roulier found that morning sunlight was the most effective for healing, even though there's less UV. Isn't that interesting? Treatment should be given in summer between 6 and 9 a.m. at low altitudes, even earlier still, because in this way, the best results can be achieved. So, in other words, ultraviolet light is not the only healing quality in sunlight. My presentation called The Healing Power of Night and Day gives some details on this and quotes from a lady named Ellen White and the science behind it. Yeah, I recommend that. Here we go. Their primary healing tools at the sun cure clinics of Switzerland were sunlight, air, and rest. Dr. Roulier found that healing could be accelerated by three more things. Number one, the work cure. He says, we have organized manual work for the tedious hours of treatment. These occupations can be carried out even during the periods of cure with the necessary graduation and moderation. And far from causing any fatigue for the patients, they constitute, on the contrary, a salutary diversion which revives their spirits and favors the progress of their cure. It would be a great mistake to lose sight of the influence of illness on the mind of the patient. That's why the work cure is so valuable. And not to take care of each one's psychophysical equilibrium. With patients, even bedridden patients, who are more than any other liable to get discouraged, the work cure is not only an incomparable stimulant of the moral condition, it is also a first-rate factor in recovery. It wasn't just exercise or work, it was useful labor. Application 1 to this: patients didn't wait till they were cured to start working. They found that work was part of the cure. You know where I'm going with this? So too, working for the good of others is part of our cure from sin and selfishness. If we wait till we are free from the disease of sin, we will never work for others. And yet we must work for others. Working for others is part of the cure for sin. Number 2, he found that the social cure sped up healing. Interacting with other patients got their minds off of themselves and their sickness, and thus sped up healing. Number 3, a mostly vegetarian diet. This was combined with the social cure and the work cure and the sun cure and the open air cure for patients, and students did the gardening themselves. The school in the sun. Dr. Rollier created an open-air school, which he called the School in the Sun. It was for both prevention and recovery from TB. Girls dressed in thin, white, loose-knit, natural fiber clothing because sunlight could penetrate to the skin undistorted by dark clothing. It was Dr. Rollier's School in the Sun that triggered the worldwide movement for open-air schools, including the Battle Creek Sanitarium. All clinics with children had an open-air school. Hats were for newcomers not yet accustomed to sunlight, and when one simply had enough sunlight for the day. It prevented headaches, overheating, and possible nausea as a result of overheating or too much ultraviolet light when not used to it, etc. And kids and patients from the cities, they were not used to sunlight or fresh air. Morning exercise was hiking up a mountain to school with desk and chair on back. This is one example of free time at the sun care clinics or at the open air school. The photo is just one example of how the children spent their free time. If you look closely, you will see that the majority of these children have bunches of flowers in their hands to bring back to the school. All right, now we get into it. Before and after, with and without. Here comes the proof. And what you are going to see is just a tiny little fraction of what sunlight can really do. Surgical and lung tuberculosis. Dr. Rollier asserted that he could cure all forms of TB, any stage, any age, even though immobilized for many months in bed. His patients had good appetites, noticeably strengthened and toned muscles, increasing hemoglobin content, diminished pain, and sometimes totally relieved pain. Swellings, infiltrations, and edema also disappear in TB lesions of bones and joints. This was accomplished with sunbathing. Muscles without exercise, folks. Yet today, when patients are on bed rest indoors just a couple of days, muscles begin to atrophy and weaken. Think of the implications for our patients and families if we treat them outdoors in the sunlight and fresh air. If they're emaciated, their muscles will grow strong. All right, you will also begin to see how many drugs may be avoided by using God's healing agencies. All right, first case study. This patient, age 4.5, he had advanced TB, both feet, right hand, and left lung. Mainstream doctors, considered amputating this cute little boy's legs and right hand. He had 34 TB spots on his body. He had weakness and wasting of body, inflamed and enlarged bones, inflamed bone membrane, inflamed inner wall of abdomen and pelvis, inflamed glands or lymph nodes, very enlarged lymph nodes, and numerous abnormal body tunnels from the TB. And yet Dr. Rollier saved this little boy, saved his legs, saved his arm, and his lung. All those issues were cured in 1 year at Dr. Rollier's Sun Cure Clinic. Notice he's got a tan. No amputations needed. The disease was stopped and the body healed, but TB had caused anatomical damage that could not be fully restored. Look at his toes. They were never fully straightened back out. There's only so much we can do because the damage was so extensive. And here he is, 2.5 years later. See that little red arrow there? That's him. This is Dr. Rollier speaking. He says, gardening and farming are suitable for convalescent lung and bone cases more than any other kinds of work. They all get so hardened by open air and sunlight. Their muscles get so wonderfully developed, and such a high degree of resistance is achieved on their part that they are envied by many a low country laborer. I'm envious of it. Resistance to both disease and weather changes. That's what they mean. The second photo demonstrates health care done right. They're haying. That is their health care. No drugs required. He continues on. The general sun bath, by dilating the capillaries of the skin, determines a flow of blood from the depths to the surface through the muscular layers. It stimulates and regularizes the circulation better than the best massages. Oh, man. Automatic. And admirably restores the musculature. This is from Heliotherapy, Its Therapeutic, Prophylactic, and Social Value by Augusta Rollier. This is a quote from Fundamentals of Christian Education, 1923, page 35. Work performed in the open air is 10-fold more beneficial to health than indoor labor. Both the mechanic and the farmer have physical exercise, yet the farmer is the healthier of the two. Nothing short of nature's invigorating air and sunshine will fully meet the demands of the system. Haven't I been telling you this? Yes, 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 yes. Nothing short of nature's invigorating air and sunshine will fully meet the demands of the system. Okay, I'm frustrated. Here we go. This is an illustration of the effect of alpine sun and open-air treatment on the general health. This is a quote from Sunshine and Open Air. The air and sun bath is the most powerful of all tonics and health restorers. It rebuilds the organism, and he means that. It actually rebuilds the organism, including the bones, which we'll get to. It rebuilds the organism and increases its vitality. Children strengthened during the summer months by air and sun baths are hardier and can much better withstand all the illnesses that may affect them during the winter time. The same applies to adults. In fact, the general health of Dr. Rollier's patients proved quite remarkable. Visitors often commented on the lack of coughs and colds among children who were so exposed. It is important that the convalescents should not return directly into the debilitating atmosphere of cities. With this in view, we started 23 years ago the working colony of Laysan, and since then, an agricultural colony at Cernye. In both establishments, all patients completely cured gradually recovered during several months the habit of working under usual conditions. What you're looking at is usual conditions, outdoor labor. This is from their advertising booklet, The Sun Cure, page 8. There's no publishing date. The working colonies and the agricultural colonies could be the most practical application of natural law healthcare we could ever come up with. This is the healthcare that God intended. Living and working outdoors is God's automatic healthcare system. As we human beings just go about our daily chores in the garden, in the farm, we're getting healthy. Take off your shirts. The Sun Cure and the Clinique manufacture. Oh, isn't this interesting? This is a Sun Cure clinic that was also a factory. Now that is a practical application of our true health care and of our health message. Wouldn't it be something to combine health recovery with an industry today, now, at our lifestyle centers? Weren't we told of the need in the end times of having housing and industry available for those needing to get out of the cities? And for the persecuted, huh? Look at that. This fellow. This patient arrived with 42 open foci of TB. In other words, 42 manifestation spots on him. The second one, B, after 8 months of sun cure and outdoor living. The third picture, after 13 years and retraining in agricultural labor. No, he wasn't at the sun cure clinic for 13 years, no. But he never went back to the cities. This man never developed cancer from spending so much time in the sunlight. Even 13 years later while working in agriculture in the sunlight. This fellow was age 13, multiple TB, multiple foci of osteitis, periostitis, adenitis, precarious general state. And now here he is, the same patient cured after 6 months of sun cure in Leysen. General condition, splendid. Finally, the same patient 15 years later. So this boy was cured in 6 months and he stayed in agriculture. And no cancer even after 15 years. Next case study. This lady was cured in 1 year. This patient came back and worked as a nurse in the sun cure clinics. Never developed cancer. Dr. Rollier's patients proved that cancer is not caused by sunlight, even though they spent more time in the sunlight than almost anyone. They vindicated God's pronouncement of sunlight good. This is truly light as medicine. This lady had a syphilitic guma, or an ulcerated sternum, healed with 3 months of heliotherapy in Leysen. Now, a guma is a soft tumor-like growth of the tissues, granuloma, that occurs in people with syphilis. Now this one we should be familiar with here in America. This is Dr. Rollier speaking about arthritis deformans. This has yielded repeatedly to heliotherapy. Synovial effusions, excess synovial fluid in a joint, and spontaneous attacks of pain disappear, or else become lessened, as also do the swellings of articular bone ends, creaking of joints, muscular shrinking, and pain radiating along a nerve. Yes, from Heliotherapy, 2nd edition, 1927, page 280. Unfortunately, I have not found before and after images of arthritis deformans in Dr. Rollier's books. I never found anything that's in his books that said that these fingers were straightened out. Never saw photos of it either. Just this description that you're looking at. War wounds. In the domain of war surgery, the sun renders immense services. We have observed among the soldiers interned at Leysen that after a few weeks of heliotherapeutics, penetrating wounds that had been suppurating or weeping pus for 18 months and more dried up. The healing of indolent and recalcitrant sores, or slow-to-heal sores, the disappearance of inflammatory residues and edema, the development of muscles, and the recovery of movement in articular joints that had until then been ankylosed, stiffened or fused, were also seen healed. Bone fractures. Dr. Rollier says, the favorable influence of the sun in cases of fractures has been well known for a long time. Thus, Percy noticed that fractures in patients who lie in a secluded corner of the ward where sunlight never reached united very slowly. But consolidation of the broken bones took a normal length of time as soon as these cases were moved to the sunny parts of the ward. Get him outside. This is osteomyelitis of tibia after opening. It was healed and epithelialized in 6 months. So, how do you expose this to sunlight without getting bugs inside it? Well, they had a solution for that. Wire netting was used on wounds instead of bandages to allow sun and air to speed healing. No bugs allowed. This is an exceedingly practical thing to know. It keeps bugs out, but not sunlight. Someone should make these things. I'm not gonna, but wow. This patient is 12 years old, has extensive caries of dorsal vertebrae with huge kyphosis, paraplegia, muscle atrophy, and in a precarious general condition. Picture B, same patient after 18 months of sun cure. Complete cure with full mechanical correction of kyphosis, with the doctor's help, without the use of plaster jacket. All right, and caries means decay and crumbling of teeth or bones. Dorsal means back. Kyphosis means excessive outward curvature of the spine, causing hunching of the back. Now, while Dr. Rollier is saying that sunlight cured a paralyzed patient, it wasn't as marvelous as it first sounds. It was not a severed spinal cord, rather a disease process that impinged upon its functioning. Okay. The following story about rickets may not at first seem very relevant here in the States, but the story's long-buried health principle may save your life or your children's lives someday. I'm going to start with 3 simple observations and then explain the principles. Ready? Rickets. It has been shown that the systematic exposure of children living on a deficient diet in Vienna to the sun out of doors prevented or brought about healing of the rickety process in their bones, while children kept in the ward all showed rickety bones except one, who, lying in a cot near an open door, was crossed by the sunbeams. Now, image A, that's rickets case before heliotherapy. Image B, after 2 years of sun cure at the Alpine Sanatorium. 2 chickens reared on a ricket-producing diet. The small one was kept in the shade. The large one had unlimited exposure to sunlight and open air. Animals and men that have a well-chosen diet with a sufficient supply of vitamins can live for long periods in the absence of sunlight without a profound alteration of their vital functions. But when the diet is deficient, exposure to sun can ward off or delay the evil effects. That's from Sunshine and Open Air, 1925, Professor Leonard Hill, page 95, and plate 8. Both young rats and children on a deficient diet are protected from rickety changes in their bones by a short daily exposure to the sun. In other words, a good diet helps make up for sunlight deficiency. Good sunlight helps make up for a diet deficiency. This was when the idea was formed that sunlight is a nutrient and or a catalyst for nutrient absorption. The next slide is Dr. Rollier's input on this topic. He says, whenever disease has forced us to immobilize a joint, muscular atrophy infallibly results. Against this, there is only one remedy, and this is just sunlight. Under the influence of the sun, which guarantees better nutrition, wasting does not occur, and those muscles which may have already become atrophied recover their volume. This recovery and development of muscles are constant and characteristic phenomena seen in all our patients undergoing the sun cure. God has many redundant, overlapping, backup systems in nature and in our body. Muscle development without exercise. The J.N. Adam Memorial Hospital in Perrysburg, New York, organized the first notable example of Dr. Rollier's Swiss sun and open-air treatment of TB in the U.S. A series of sunlight treatments on this patient that you see right here. Yes, it was actually J.N. Adams' patient here. A series of sunlight treatments on this patient with intestinal and peritoneal TB, a form of the disease unusually fatal in most instances, resulted in a bright, healthy, muscular, tanned individual. From Light and Health, 1926. A splendid general condition, a new skin, the resistance of pigmented integuments. Integuments means the outer layer of the body. And a complete reconstitution of the musculature, which often endows former cachectic patients with the bodies of athletes. Such are the characteristics of cures by heliotherapy. Cachectic or cachexia means weakness and wasting of the body due to severe chronic illness. Now, this patient here is not Rollier's patients. It's from Clinical Applications of Sunlight and Artificial Radiation, 1926, and page 263. A 2.5 years of sunlight treatment to right cheek alone failed to cure the lupus. Lupus vulgaris is a form of manifestation of TB. Now, why would I put this failure in this presentation? Because it's going to lead to a general healing principle concerning the proper use of sunlight and sun lamps. Here it is. This lady was cured in 6 months when full body exposure to sun lamp was added. The principle? Sunlight's greatest benefit comes systemically. Therefore, full body exposure is far more beneficial than just targeting a specific little point on the body. Remember, Adam and Eve in a garden with full body exposure to sunlight all day, every day. I believe the cure would have been faster still had they used natural sunlight. 15 minutes of sunlight a day to the hands and face is not a therapeutic level. Sunlight is not actually a therapy. It's a vital, basic human requirement to function and prevent and reverse disease. That's why we were naked in the Garden of Eden. We need all the sun we can get, whether healthy or not. And what do the merchants of Pharmakeia say about lupus? Because that's what this lady had, lupus vulgaris. They say, while there's no cure for lupus, well, of course they'll say that, current treatments focus on improving quality of life through controlling symptoms and minimizing flare-ups. Drug use. This begins with lifestyle modifications, including sun protection. In other words, stay out of the sun. The opposite of what actually cured her. Of course, there's no cure for lupus in the realm of Pharmakeia. Of course not. Of course not. Sunlight was the only proven thing to reverse it. Their conditions were enabled in part by sunlight deficiency. Not a pharmaceutical deficiency, a sunlight deficiency. Every single one of Dr. Rollier's patients arrived sensitive to the sunlight. TB, lupus, etc. It was all the same soup. And yes, there is more than one type of lupus, but no matter what labels are attached to the numberless manifestations of broken natural law, those resulting diseases have been reversed by obeying those natural laws. We do not overcome so-called sun sensitivities by avoiding sunlight. That is a doctrine of devils. Sunlight is one of the most powerful, comprehensive healing agents ever given to man. To avoid it is just what the enemy of our souls wants. We deal with the cause of the negative reactions, and sunlight is not the cause. The solution was so simple. Dr. Rollier simply placed his patients on an anti-toxic vegetarian diet and introduced his patients to sunlight very, very slowly. A small amount of skin exposed for a short amount of time, and take it from there. Ankylosis. Now, ankylosis is an abnormal stiffening and immobility of a joint due to fusion of the bones. Oh, that cannot be good. Spondylitis is inflammation of the joints of the backbone. Ankylosing spondylitis is fusion of the spine. Dr. Rollier discovered that sunlight deficiency can cause ankylosing spondylitis. He found that even the plaster casts that he used for some patients caused ankylosis and ankylosing spondylitis. This is an excellent picture to show that, but these are not actually Dr. Rollier's patients. That's just the image that I had. All right. This is Dr. Rollier speaking. Just as ankylosis follows the complete exclusion of light by plaster of Paris casts, so does the return of mobility follow sun cure. That's from Heliotherapy, 2nd edition, 1927, page 166. In other words, ankylosis is the common side effect of plaster casts, especially body casts like these boys are wearing. Dr. Rollier dealt with that issue by discarding plaster casts and switching to metal frame braces. The application for us is that we cannot afford to be constantly clothed in darkness. If we continue to live a lifestyle of darkness, our joints may ankylose. Our muscles may atrophy. Our strength may diminish. Our food may not metabolize as well. Our immune system may not be as strong as it can be. Our skin circulation will diminish causing cold hands, feet, and limbs, which in turn will cause our heart to have to work harder, which weakens the heart and health, and our intestinal organs become dangerously and chronically congested. We need to set up private space for regular, full-body sunbathing for ourselves, for our family, for our patients. Let me give you another example of the dangers of keeping the body wrapped in darkness. You remember this photo of the Weimar Joint Sanitarium in California? Well, there's an interesting story that came from there involving a body cast. The patient would later become a famous actor. And there is Pat Morita, or Morita, I don't know. He played the part of Mr. Miyagi of the Karate Kid films. He was diagnosed with spinal tuberculosis at the age of 2. He spent the next 9 years at the Weimar Joint Sanitarium in a body cast and unable to walk. Seriously? Eventually, he was transferred to the Shriners Hospital in San Francisco, where he received surgery to fuse 4 vertebrae in the spine. He was able to walk out of the hospital at age 11. The tragic part about this is that the doctors at the Weimar facility did not realize that plaster body casts actually caused severe damage to the joints, which is ironic given that their specialty was treating joints. They were supposed to be the experts. Plaster body casts blocked the healing rays of sunlight to the very body parts that needed it most. It dramatically increased Pat Morita's stay at that institution and resulted in having to surgically fuse 4 of his vertebrae together. The casts themselves tended to fuse joints together, and not in a good way. Even Dr. Rollier's worst patients recovered 7 to 8 years faster than Pat Morita. So, if we want to optimize our health for ourselves or our patients, we must give our full body regular exposure to sunlight. Back to ankylosis. This is Dr. Rollier speaking. He says, the sun cure is the best treatment for preserving the mobility of the joint. We have seen old ankylosis of the shoulder, elbow, wrist, hip, foot, and even the knee yield to this treatment with recovery of partial or complete joint function. All right, let's talk about that. Sunlight can accurately separate joints and bones that have been fused together. How does sunlight know how to do that? God said, I am the Lord that healeth thee, the God that healeth thee. I believe it. All right, we had a patient at a lifestyle center I used to work at. The patient had a debilitating case of ankylosing spondylitis. Ankylosing spondylitis can cause some of the bones in the spine to fuse. His hip joints were affected as well. Had we known about the Laysan Sun Cure then and started the patient on consistent, full-body sunlight, that patient may very well have recovered and may never have needed the eventual joint replacements. We were all under the false idea that 15 minutes a day of sunlight to hands and face was all that was needed to remain healthy and or health recovery. No. The results at Laysan were not accomplished with 15 minutes a day to hands and face. Adam and Eve had full body exposure to sunlight all day, every day. The list of just the categories of today's drug options to treat ankylosis is too long to list here. But Dr. Rollier reversed ankylosis with sunlight. Bones worn away. Dr. Rollier speaking. Sunlight in both rickets and tuberculosis has an indisputably recalcifying action on the bones. It is most evident in a collection of more than 50,000 x-rays which we possess. In many cases, for example, where the head of the femur, that's the thigh bone, has almost disappeared. The reconstitution of the bone is so complete. Yes, reconstitution of the bone. The reconstitution of the bone is so complete that one may, without exaggeration, term it restoration to original condition. This is magnificent, life-altering news. Think of how different our medical work can be with this understanding. How do we actually trust God? Think of the practical applications of true medical missionaries. Think of the surgeries, the suffering, the drugs, and financial debt that could be avoided. And at the end of the treatment of son, they will not only be healed, they will be like athletes. This is an inevitability for us, for the faithful. But we must learn it while we still can, because this is not going to be online forever. I'm surprised it's still here. This is a 30-year condition of arthritis of the knee with bulky fungus. Structure is completely erased. There's no outlines. It's hard to see the outlines. The second image is the same man cured in 10 months. Notice the sharp outlines of the bones. We have witnessed similar and equally unhoped-for transformations in the X-ray pictures of tuberculosis, osteoarthritis of the knee, shoulder, elbow, and wrist. In the knee, for instance, even when an osteoarthritis has destroyed the cartilages and articular surfaces, the reconstitution of the eroded surfaces and cartilages is frequent. And we have seen it go as far as restoration to the original state. Next one. A, before the sun cure. B is after the sun cure. The right shoulder arthritis has partial destruction of the head, pronounced humerus atrophy, healed in 18 months, reconstitution of the head, recalcification of the humerus. Sunlight reconstituted worn down bones correctly. The bones in the first image are so diminished in density that parts of the bones seem to be transparent to X-ray. Have the merchants of Pharmacia ever told us anything like this? These patients at Leysen avoided joint replacement surgeries by sunbathing. God has made provisions for the terrible emergencies of disease, even this. God's healthcare system is showing us how to escape pharmaceuticals, supplements, and even surgeries. And that's just the sunlight. He has many other magnificent healing agencies. So let's review what sunlight can do. Sunlight did what? Reversed swelling and inflammation, boosted overall health and vitality, dried up recalcitrant open sores, increased resistance to disease, relieved pain, even nerve pain, prevented coughs and colds, disinfected wounds, cured incurable diseases, reversed paralysis, acted as a nutrient and catalyst for nutrient uptake, reversed osteoporosis, straightened rickety bones, healed broken bones, regrew worn away bones and cartilage, strengthened and toned muscles without exercise, even when bedridden for months on end, stopped crumbling teeth and bones, and accurately separated fused joints and bones. Light as medicine did far better than actual medicine for the many severe medical conditions of the patients at Layson. And this is just a small fraction of what sunlight can do. And now we are beginning to understand why God pronounced sunlight good, and why God pronounced woe on those who call God's light darkness, and darkness light, who condemned as evil that which God pronounced as good. Yet those of us who see the beautiful truth of what sunlight can actually do may in awe ask the question, what hath God wrought? And what is man that thou art mindful of him? For we have a God in Israel who is mighty to save, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. And it is he that healeth thee. Thank you for watching this video. Please share it. You have my permission. God is good.